Hello, friends and fellows of the internet, it's me, Chaz, and welcome to a new series that I like to call My Video Game Diary. This series is going to be a hopefully monthly series where I talk to you all about some of the games that I've been playing and what I think about them, some of the other games that I've started, and whether or not I recommend them to you all. So yes, it is April. I'm actually just going to be talking about the games that I played in March, even though this year I've beaten 11 different games and or campaigns. This month has been really hectic. I've played a lot of games this month, but the games that I've actually been able to finish are relatively short. All of these games I've beaten probably within 10-15 hours at most. But the first game that I actually beat this month was Doom Eternal, which came out on March 20th. Very, very recent release, so it's still pretty hot, pretty popular, and I'm assuming a lot of you guys are playing it. If you aren't playing it, I highly recommend it. Back in 2017, I believe, when the 2016 version of Doom came out on Switch, I was actually planning on doing a review for it, because it kind of provided me an escapist antithesis to Christmas, because I don't know, I just get really down around Christmas. It's something that I've dealt with for a really long time, where I just get kind of sad around that time of year. And Doom provided a gory, heavy metal antithesis to Christmas. And the only thing that I would honestly describe those Christmas and Doom with that have in common is saccharine. And by saccharine, I mean very different definitions. One's bloody and red, and the other one's like the goopy saccharine that you might think of when you think of emotions. The way I describe Doom in one short blurb is that it's a heavy metal album that you can play, and it kicks so much ass. If you don't know, it's a science fiction, first-person shooter, very gory, very bloody. If you're under 17, you're not going to be able to buy it by yourself unless you buy it online, but I don't really recommend that. It's only, at this point, on PC, PS4, and Xbox One. I played it on Xbox One because that is, right now, that's probably my favorite platform to play on in terms of just feeling controllers and also just like parity and power, because ultimately it is a very fast-paced game, so I do recommend you play it on something that it will run at 60 frames per second just because of how fast-paced it is. It's even more fast-paced than the 2016 version, which I did actually play on Switch and really loved, but Doom Eternal is very different in a lot of ways because it's a bit more linear, it's a bit more condensed, it's a bit more focused. In my opinion, it's probably a better game just because the demon designs and locales are far more diverse. If you did play 2016's Doom, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. It seems like every single level was the same. Basically, you kill some demons, you find a key, you get lost, you find another key, you get lost again, you kill more demons, you find another key, and then boom, the level's over. Maybe you find a secret if you're lucky. But the way that they have progression and maps and secrets done in this game is much more linear, and for people who are fans of the more classic kind of Doom, it might be a little bit to its detriment just because that's how the original Doom was. It was a little bit labyrinthine, it was a little bit like you get lost pretty frequently. But I think that these changes of condensing Doom Eternal into something like that really, really help the formula and flow of the gameplay. And it actually does introduce some new enemies, which 2016 kind of did, but not in the same breadth or magnitude, because Doom Eternal has a lot of different enemies, and they keep introducing you to them basically up until probably about halfway through the campaign, and same goes for the weapons. The weapons all feel a lot better, or some of the weapons feel better, some of the weapons feel the same as 2016, and I think that's one of the other really big benefits to this game, is that every weapon feels worthwhile, and every combat encounter feels choreographed and planned and designed in a way that 2016 didn't necessarily. I think in 2016 it was a little bit more freeform. You could kill anyone in any order, but the changes that they made to the combat system in Doom Eternal have made it so that when you kill a demon, there are 4 outcomes. You kill them normally just by shooting them only, and that rewards you a little bit of health. You kill them with a glory kill, which rewards you a lot of health. You kill them with your flamethrower, which gives you armor, and then you kill them with a chainsaw, which gives you ammo. They're either on some kind of recharge or cooldown meter, so basically you can use a chainsaw to kill enemies every like couple seconds, and the same thing goes for your flamethrower. With that in mind, there are some downgrades given to the Doomslayer to make those changes to the combat mechanics actually feel worthwhile, because I think that if it was like 2016 and you could carry a lot more ammo, things like needing to kill enemies with a chainsaw wouldn't really matter, because I found myself running out of ammo pretty frequently. So if something like that sounds like something that would really bother you, then I recommend maybe playing on an either easier difficulty or just playing 2016, because even though this game is better, it does have things that people might not like. I personally like that because it makes you really think, and gets you really engaged in the game. And one other thing that I want to talk about is, surprisingly, the story. So the story is not great. I mean, it's fun. It's really fun. There's some actually hilarious moments where it feels like some of the most badass, cool parts of stuff like Halo, and especially Halo 2, where it's like Master Chief is like, "Sir, finishing this fight," and then he jumps out with like he jumps out of a ship into space with a fucking bomb. There are moments in Doom Eternal that feel like that. The Doomslayer never talks. There are flashbacks where someone in his place might be talking, but the Doomslayer himself, the character that you play as, does not talk. Everyone is talking to you. He talks by doing hilariously badass, over-the-top things, and it's amazing. It's really fun, and I honestly, I would say don't skip any of the cutscenes just because they're fun. Anyways, moving on to another very popular game that I'm sure all of you or most of you have heard about is Resident Evil 2 Remake. So, Resident Evil 2 Remake is weird for me because the demo for Resident Evil 2 Remake was the first part of Resident Evil anything. Any frames. Literally, it was the first frame of Resident Evil that I had ever played, the entire franchise. And when I first played it, I did not like that demo. I was pissed. It felt like Leon didn't move right. It felt like everything was clunky. It felt like ammo pickups were not populated well. And honestly, I think that's just because I wasn't used to Resident Evil. If you're someone like me, your first games were all Nintendo games, where movement and fun and polish in gameplay is the first and usually the only thing that's really there. And of course, well, other things, but in terms of the game itself, mechanically it might be simple, but overall it's really impossible to master. Like, I think there are games like Mario 64 you see people continually innovating, and I think I'm the person with a mindset where I prefer simple mechanics and complex games, whereas this game is mechanically complex but overall relatively simple, I guess. My first Resident Evil game that I actually beat and really loved was Resident Evil 4. I actually streamed that, so that actually might be something that some of you remember seeing me stream way back a couple months ago. But I really enjoyed playing that game, and I was like, okay, I think it's time for me to go back to Resident Evil 2 Remake, because that game was some people's game of the year, and it's really good. First off, it's one of the most pretty games I've ever played. It's just genuinely a stunning looking game. Whenever there are some occasional lighting things that look kind of weird and make things look oddly fuzzy, it's very polished too. And I think, as someone who doesn't like horror, it does a good job of kind of meshing together horror and action elements. It feels like a super faithful remake, from what I understand, because I've never played the original, while also aping a lot of the things that make Resident Evil 4, which most people consider to be the best in the series, great. And then combining some of those mechanics and systems, design ideologies, to make a really refined product. Now, the game itself is actually relatively short, if you just want to do one run, which is the only thing that I've done so far. I played Leon's route for the first time, and it only took me I think it took me 8 hours, but it did not feel like 8 hours. It was fun. It felt really well paced. The story is, I mean, it's Resident Evil, so you can't really expect the story to be anything good. Well, anything amazing. It's not like Last of Us caliber material, but it's still a fun story. It's like comparing something like The Godfather to something like a Marvel movie. Because a Marvel movie still has its merits, and sometimes the writing isn't that great, but it's still fun. Whereas The Godfather is like amazing and it's well written and everything. And so Resident Evil in a lot of ways feels like a B movie in that respect, but I still respect it for it. It's still fun. So if you like environmental stuff, if you like puzzles, if you're a fan of Metroid, honestly, like I am, I definitely recommend checking out Resident Evil 2, because it has a lot of Metroid-y style elements of backtracking. I need to get this item to get here, which will take me back here. And going off of that, I think it's Metroid-y in that respect, because to me, the best Metroidvanias and games like that rely on backtracking and exploration have placement of items and placement of rooms and enemies that feel absolutely deliberate, especially when a map is super expansive. It's really hard to nail that, and I think Resident Evil 2 Remake nails that in a really special way. Now, the third and final game that I rolled credits on in March was Beautiful Katamari. So, for those of you who've been on the channel for a while, you will all absolutely, definitely know that I like Katamari. I played Katamari Damacy as my kind of escapist game in 2018 for Christmas time, because for some reason that's a tradition that I have now, is I find a game that I really just like love and helps me like kind of forget some of my troubles behind. And I think Katamari Damacy is still my favorite in the franchise. I've only played those 2 games, but Beautiful Katamari is an Xbox 360 exclusive, which is super weird for a Japanese developed game, by the way, because I don't want to get into that, because I feel like it's something, if you know, you know, and if you don't, it's a long story. But Beautiful Katamari is beautiful. I mean, it has a lot of the things that I love about the original game, and it has a spectacular soundtrack. It's really cute. It's really funny. There's a lot of comical stuff happening in the world, and it takes a lot of those things, and it kind of builds on the groundwork laid by Katamari Damacy in really interesting ways. For example, the worlds feel much more expansive. In fact, the final level has you... The final level is of that game is sublime. It is amazing what they can do with Katamari, seeing its evolution from the PS2 game to Beautiful Katamari on the Xbox 360, because the evolution from Katamari Damacy, which I think I still like more because it feels like there are more specifically planned encounters in that game. Every time you roll in a specific area, the area is a little different, and it functions somewhat the same, but you start in a different place, you roll up different items in each level. And I think that's what makes that game so special, because each level is kind of unique in that respect. Whereas Beautiful Katamari has much bigger, more populated, more busy environments. And that's awesome, because busy does a game like Katamari justice, and honestly, it feels great because of it. But also, every locale in that game, for the most part, feels much more samey. There are like maybe 3 or 4 different places that you can actually roll around in, which I think ultimately serves to the game's detriment. Not necessarily because Katamari Damacy had more places, but because it felt less unique. And while everything else about it, whether it was the ways in which Beautiful Katamari introduced new mechanics and new kinds of ways to go about rolling up a Katamari, which I really enjoyed. But Beautiful Katamari introduces some changes that I enjoyed some, and some I didn't. It made some things interactive in a way that the first one really wasn't, where sometimes you'd bump into like a coat rack or something, and then the coats would fly all over the place. Or there would be doors that would open and close once you got your Katamari to a certain size. And while that serves as a more immersive thing compared to Katamari Damacy's thing where it gates off areas with like cones and stuff and tells you what size you should be before you're able to roll through there, I don't know, it just feels different. And also the controls are a little... This sounds weird to be a complaint, but the controls are tighter. But because they're tighter, they feel less fast. Like, one of the things I love about Katamari is that the controls are intentionally really, really clunky, and it feels like you're rolling a big ball of stuff that you're not really in control of. Whereas in Beautiful Katamari, they do this thing where you start out, you know, rolling your ball, and it feels very tight, very precise, very... I'd almost compare it to something like playing Super Smash Bros. Melee, where the controls are precise, but they feel delayed. And the bigger you grow your Katamari, the more that goes away, and the more it becomes more of the classic Katamari feel of kind of clunky, weird controls. And I definitely like that part. Now, in terms of other like extras and stuff in this game definitely has a lot more going on than the original. It just has more to roll up. It has more cousins to roll up. You can actually play as the cousins, which I really like. It even has DLC, which I haven't really bought or gone into just because I don't really feel like it at this point. I'll probably feel like it once I want to go back to it. But overall, it's definitely not my favorite game that I beat the past month, but it's certainly a game that I highly recommend. And because I know most of you don't have Xbox 360s, you probably aren't, none of you are probably going to play that. Just to recap, I played Doom Eternal, Resident Evil 2 Remake, and Beautiful Katamari. And honestly, if I were to recommend those games to you all in any order, I would say Doom Eternal goes first, Resident Evil 2 Remake goes second, and Beautiful Katamari goes third. That's nothing to say against any of those games in terms of what I think, because honestly, I think all three of those games are really, really good, and I'm honestly lucky that this year I've basically only been playing and beating really good games. So if you have a PS4, if you have a gaming PC, if you have an Xbox One, I highly recommend that you pick up Resident Evil 2 Remake, and I highly recommend that you pick up Doom Eternal, because those games both kick ass. And so does Beautiful Katamari, but the amount of people who have an Xbox 360 and are willing to boot it back up are pretty slim. So I just wanted to thank you all very much for watching all the way to the end of this relatively long video. I'm hoping that this can be a new series for me every month where I kind of just talk to you all about some of the games I've been playing and what I think about them. If you haven't already, please subscribe, please hit that like button, comment down below maybe some games you'd like to hear me talk about, some games that you played, what you think about the games that I played. Just let me know anything down below in the comments, and of course, please follow me on Twitter and Instagram at CHAS_MKE, and please wash your hands. For everyone in your life, stay inside, just please. Anyways, thank you all for watching. Peace out.